we're talking about a saturated fat and butter that not only not bad for us, but it's essential to our health and longevity.
We still hear then mostly about the omega-3s and the omega-6s, and we're not hearing about C15.
Most people are sitting at around 0.2% of total fatty acids in our blood is C15. That's putting us right on the edge of this cellular fragility syndrome of having fragile cells, the C15 deficiency syndrome.
I'm curious if there's been a lot of attention or studies geared towards the menopausal population and how adding this back in can lessen all of those symptoms. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Amber, it's great to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation. I got to tell you how I even came across you guys as a dear friend of mine in the podcast space, Chase Tuning. He used to produce my show, and he messaged me and he's like, dude, do you know about Fatty 15? Do you know about what's happening with C15? Do you know? I was like, I don't know any of it. He's like, Amber, you've got to know this is a wild discovery in the health and wellness space, in science. He's like, all of it. He's like, you've got to teach, you've got to learn about it. You've got to share it with your audience. And so anyways, that's how I got connected with you guys. And so I can't wait to get just totally nerd out on all the science behind it, which I love. I'm pumped.
Oh, this is great. We love nerds. So
yes.
We're excited to be here. This is great.
Okay, well, before we dive into this, so I always love to just kick it off with some rapid fire questions. And so we already had this conversation before we hit record. We are both women in midlife. And I would love to know for you, what are your top 3 health tips for midlife women who are looking to feel more energized and in control of their well-being?
Yeah. So, number 1 is sleep. So I think that we are all recognizing it, and the science is science increasing on that front, but also we just know it, right? And so sleep is so important. And when we get to this age, Amber, sleep becomes can get difficult. So really finding ways to protect your sleep, and that has, benefits all the way down. What I have found from an exercise perspective, that I used to do primarily aerobic stuff, and I'm a hesitant exerciser. I'll be very honest. This is not like, something I loved to do, but now I do. But I used to do mainly aerobics, and then I started adding in resistance training, and it changed everything for me. So that was a huge enabler with regard to it. Just unlocked everything, and I fit into all of my pants. So that was awesome.
Which is lovely. Yes. So sleep, strength training, and yes, those are 2. I fiercely protect my sleep. Strength training, yes, less like cardio, more strength training. And what's one more that you've seen has been a big dial mover for you?
Yeah, and so this is a choice to make with your physician, right? And so this is important to caveat with this, but to be able to provide compounds and molecules that we need that go down as we age, and as a result, speed up the aging process and everything. So menopause, I've gone through that. So the drop in estrogen speeds up aging, it accelerates, it leads to all these things we have. When I put hormone replacement therapy, and again, for me, with my discussion with my physician, it really helped, Amber, with regard to regain kind of the ground that I lost on the aging front from a hormone perspective. Everybody's journey is different. And then, of course, the other molecule, which we'll talk about today, of course, is Fatty 15. It's the only supplement I take, and it has been a life changer for me from a healthy aging standpoint.
Oh, I can't wait to dive into that. And yes, the HRT, yes, I agree. It's every woman's journey. But I can tell you, like, when I started taking progesterone, like, it was just a game changer for me, honestly. And it definitely, for me, really, really helped. And I think I love the way you framed it as just kind of like getting back the ground you lost. And also just like, I know for me, I was just, and I hear this a lot from women, is like, you just feel like your body's been hijacked. It's like, God, like, not even just, right? Like, what happened? Like, I don't get it, right? And so I think for me, I'm a huge fan too. It totally changed my world. So I love that. 3 big ones. Those are great. What's the one personal health practice that helps you stay balanced and energized through the demands of your work and life? What's like maybe one habit that you have or one personal health practice?
Oh yeah, that one's easy. So every day I take a nap in the middle of the day.
Yes,
Right.
to a
And
nap.
like I used to feel so guilty about it ever. And like,
No.
we have really busy days every day, not just weekdays and weekends. Like every
Yes.
day is busy. And for me, getting that little nap in the middle of the day, it's like I have super productive mornings. I store whatever it is that happened this morning when I go get my nap in. And then when I wake up, I'm refreshed, reset, and I'm able to get back into the day. So for me, it's invaluable.
Oh my God, I love a freaking nap. Listen, I'm not opposed either to getting into my pajamas starting at like 6 o'clock. Like, I mean, I love, I love a nap. And when I nap, are you the kind of napper though? Do you just like lay on the couch and close your eyes? Or do you get into full sleep mode like I do? Like I put the sleep mask on, I put the brown noise on, like I'm literally going for a slumber, but it's just a nap. But how do you do it?
Yeah, that's just the latter.
Yep.
I know it is full in committed nap.
I'm in it.
And I don't have problems I know some people, have problems. They say, oh, if I nap, I'm not going to be able to sleep well. I do not have that problem. And in fact, my family and my loved ones all know it's like, Steph, go get your nap. I'm going to go whatever it is that I think I need you to do. I know that you getting that nap is the most important thing for everybody's sake. So.
Oh my God, I freaking love that. Yes, girl, I love a nap too. I love it. So if you could bust one myth about midlife women's health, what would that be and why?
Oh, that this is not a time, despite what we had talked about with regard to hormones and aging. We'll get to that because there's a solution, right? So it is not a time of collapsing. It is a time of absolute power and enablement.
Oh, yes.
You spend the first half of your life learning how you did things right. You have made mistakes. Things have gone wrong. You failed. You've come out stronger for it. You have decades of knowledge behind you, and you still have so many years ahead of you to put it to work. And so I just really see it as it's just such a fun time in life. It's just, I'm thoroughly enjoying every minute of it.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I think you know, in your 20s, you're still just a child, right? Like your brain. I feel like your brain is not even fully formed. Or I guess scientifically it is, but like you're still a child. I was still a child, and then in my 30s, now I'm thrust into actually being an adult because I was married and became a mom, and then now everything. Then I really start realizing my shortcomings because I'm trying. So now I'm just trying to figure it all out, and then for me, it was like, once I got into my 40s and now mid 40s, and I'm sure you can attest this too, and even beyond, you just start to kind of settle in a little bit more. You know so much more about yourself, what you're a yes for, what you're a no for. I mean, I love kind of this evolution of where we're at.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, you have to get through a whole lot of failures to really get to that side of, healthy confidence. And just like you said, there's an ease there. So it's good.
It's good. It's good. Okay, girl, I want to get into the meat because we've got to talk about Fatty 15. I want to talk about C15. And the listeners are like, what the hell is all this? And I'm going to tell you, like, this is such just an awesome finding that you guys, and it's just the story behind this is just wild. And I'm just so curious, and we're going to get into this of like, why aren't more people talking about this? Why isn't this like major headline news? So I want to know all of that. But first, let's just start. What is C15 and why should we care about it?
All right. So C15 is the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in over 90 years, Amber. So since omega-3s and omega-6s. So it is an essential fatty acid, means this is a nutrient that our bodies must have at certain levels to not fall apart. And our bodies don't make enough of it, which means that we have to get certain levels. It's small, but enough through our food and diet in order to maintain our health. Even more excitedly, that we have recently published a paper showing that we have the opportunity to optimize this nutrient, which we naturally get from whole fat milk and dairy products. But we've been able to leverage office-enabled research funding to optimize this molecule to help us not only get back to being healthy and fix nutritional deficiencies in C15, but to actually optimize it and help extend the quality of life and even perhaps longevity itself. So it's been a
It
fun
is,
study.
yeah, it is such a wild discovery. And so so I know that the initial, it came from like the initial observation in dolphins that led to the discovery of C15. So when was this and tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So there it was. Let's see, 2000. I guess so. Quick background. I'm a veterinary epidemiologist.
Okay.
And so, which means I'm a veterinarian, and then trained in epidemiology. So my whole job is to look for patterns in populations, whether they're animal populations of dolphins or in people, to be able to like track diseases and try to figure out what's the cause of them, and then more importantly, how to fix them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a veterinary epidemiologist, I was recruited by the Navy back in 2001 to better understand healthy aging in dolphins. And this is because the Navy has had this sustained population of about 100 bottlenose dolphins for the past 60 years. They live in the open ocean, Amber, so they go out into the open ocean every day. Every day they choose to come back. It's an amazing population in which their care, receive such good health care that while dolphins in the wild live to about 20 years old, dolphins in the Navy are routinely living 40, 50, and now they just shared with me even 60 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So as I had these more dolphins in their population that were getting older, they brought me in to help understand healthy aging in dolphins for dolphins, not for people. This is really to help the dolphins. So this discovery helping not only healthy aging in dolphins, but humans, it was an accident. Like this was not, our intent. And sometimes, the best discoveries and moments come from these accidents, right?
100%.
So we noticed that some of the dolphins, as they were getting older, were developing chronic inflammation and high cholesterol, even the full suite of changes consistent with Alzheimer's, while there were other dolphins in the same population that were not. So we were able to apply this advanced technology called metabolomics, and it basically, Amber, let us look at thousands of small molecules present in the dolphins' all fish diet, but also in their archived serum in their blood, and look for which small molecules predicted the healthiest aging dolphins. We thought it would be omega-3s because all they eat are fish.
Sure.
And lo and behold, it was C15, which I had never heard of, also called pentadecanoic acid, as the top predictor of healthy aging dolphins. And that discovery was back in 2015. So almost 10 years ago for the initial.
But that's still relatively new. I mean, but so why is, because like, I don't even know, why is it that we still hear then mostly about the omega-3s and the omega-6s, and we're not hearing about C15?
Yeah, it's a great question. It takes time for science.
Yeah.
There's a really big reason for it, and it's because C15 is a saturated fat. As I mentioned, it's called an odd chain saturated fatty acid. That for us, our primary source is whole fat milk and butter. So, Amber, we're talking about a saturated fat and butter that is not only not bad for us, but it's essential to our health and longevity. So there is a big barrier to get over, right, with regard to mass consumer education, that not all saturated fats are created equal. And in fact, this Goldilocks fatty acid C15 is essential. So it's now been published in over 100 peer-reviewed papers by prestigious institutions throughout the world. All of that science is at discoverc15.com. That's where all the peer-reviewed science is. And so on the science front, Amber, it is well accepted that C15 is a beneficial nutrient in our diet, increasingly understood as essential, and now recognition that we have nutritional deficiencies. What the next step is really forcing the conversation and bringing it to the table to say, listen, there's a decade of science that's been done. It's time for us to shed those, blinders of all saturated fats, look at it and look at the massive impact that getting C15 back into our lives, into our diet, can have on improving these health changes that we're seeing in populations, right? Of increased type 2 diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver disease among younger and younger people, that getting C15 back into our lives, this study suggests, may actually be the solution, at least a part of a solution to this problem.
It's so fascinating, and I think what comes up when you mention like the whole milk and the butter, I think I would imagine like even now, because there's such a movement, especially in the last, whatever, 15 years or however long it's been, to like not drink dairy and like, right? Like, so now we're even pushing it even further away, right? Because it's all the almond milks and the oat milks, and no one's drinking, and no one's even drinking whole milk. I mean, I still love a glass of whole milk, I'm not going to lie. However, but no one's really, but I'm not consuming it on the daily, right? And I mean, and yes, I love butter too, but you're right. Are those really the only two sources in our diet that we can get it from?
So pretty much any whole fat dairy product is a good source of C15. But like you said, Amber, that so it could be cheeses, yogurts, milks, butter.
But
Whole
full
fat.
fat, though. I mean, that's
Full
it.
fat.
Yeah,
Full
because
fat. So,
yeah.
exactly. Non-fat milk has no C15. As you mentioned, the plant-based milks have no C15. And the whole back in 1977, right? Congress, there were a lot of men having heart attacks, like really high numbers of men having heart attacks and getting heart disease. And so Congress came out with recommendations, which is kind of crazy thinking about now. Like if
That Congress did, right? Did they have any doctors on the panel? Like, I don't, or like anybody, or is it just like,
it was 5 senators. 5 senators.
That's laughable. It's wild. Okay.
They actually they developed these guidelines for all Americans, so not just for men with heart disease, but for all Americans. And they said, hey, all Americans need to reduce your intake of saturated fats because saturated fats can, at the time, believe increase your risk of heart disease. So they said all Americans should decrease their intake of saturated fats. The primary source of saturated fats that they called out was whole fat milk and butter. Interestingly, there was a second version. So that came out and it got a lot of pushback from the dairy and meat industry.
Sure.
Right?
Sure, I can imagine.
So there was that. But they also went, and just like you said, they went and sought, they got input from the NIH, from leading medical bodies. And based on that feedback they got, a second version came out shortly thereafter, in which the initial five senators that wrote this thing had actually gone down to 3, because 2 of the senators said, hey, what these medical bodies are saying is that the data are too early to make such a rash decision on a change in all Americans' diets. So in the end, what we then became known as mantra was actually based on 3 senators agreeing upon these recommendations that came with this giant warning on the front end, but nobody ever saw that.
Well, and then you had it just completely reinforced by diet culture, who started the no fat, low fat campaign. And that, I mean, you're right. And we're still like, I mean, I coached for years women and midlife women in the fat loss space. And that was like one of the biggest things we're still trying to recover from that, right? Like trying to get over that fat is not bad.
Right, exactly. And so now it's just like we can get savvy. So we started with knowing everybody knows omega-3s. So it's like, okay, great. So we initially, way back when, fats meant nothing. They were just calories in the early 1900s. And then they became like, oh, you actually have some that have nutritional benefits. And that's where omega-3 and omega-6 came from in the 1929, 1931. And then it was kind of like quiet. It was just like, okay, these omegas are good in all other fats. We're kind of figuring out. So we're learning more and more about that fats can be very different, even based upon these, like in the saturated fat category, even chain saturated fats it's just a string of carbons. If there's an even number of carbons, like C16, C18, those are even chain. Those continue to be pro-inflammatory, associated with higher risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. So we didn't get it totally wrong. It's just that these are the same foods that contain the odd chain fat, specifically C15, that we need. So we kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater on that nutrition.
Yeah. God, that's so fascinating. And so what are some of the main benefits? I know we talked about longevity, but what are some, and you kind of touched a little bit upon like Alzheimer's and things like that and heart diseases, but what are some of the benefits of C15? And I am also curious if they see more, if this affects men versus women differently, or are the benefits equal for both?
It's a good question. So let me start with the benefits, and then we'll talk about
Yeah.
men versus women. So the benefits, it's as a very simple, essential nutrient. It's literally just 15 carbons in a chain. It's a very stable fatty acid, so it has no double bonds, which means it's resistant to oxidation. So when you think about omega-3s, they're oils, and if they get exposed to oxygen, they go rancid.
Yeah.
That's why it smells like
Yeah.
fish or it smells bad. So C15 doesn't do that. It's a very stable fatty acid that doesn't get oxidized. So because of that simple property, it's one of its main roles is that it goes into our cell membranes, right? Which all we're made up of is cells.
Sure. Yeah.
And every one of our cells has a cell membrane that protects and armors it against breakdown so that the cell can do its job. So one of its main roles of C15 is that it serves as an armor. It goes into our cell membrane and it shores it up, and it makes our cells literally stronger and more resilient against breakdown, especially as we get older. So great. That's a big one. There's actually a thing called the cell membrane pacemaker theory of aging that came from A.J. Holbert from Australia. And he showed that the more stable the fatty acids in the cell membrane of mammals, the longer that mammal lived. So it actually explains why humans live longer than mice.
Wow.
Right. So now we're
Yeah.
saying, hey, let's leverage that power of C15 in individuals. And if we can increase and optimize the C15 in our cell membranes as individuals, we can optimize our own longevity and wellness. So that's its big job. But it's also called a pleiotropic molecule, which means it's pretty promiscuous. Amber, it does a lot. It gets around, So
Yeah.
and it's known to be activate key receptors that balance our metabolism and immunity. Things like PPAR, alpha, delta, and AMPK, and AKT that helps with glucose metabolism, and being able to help with insulin sensitivity. And at the same time, it inhibits bad activations receptors like JAK-STAT and HDAC6 that are responsible for pro-inflammatory processes. So by having this kind of not just 1, 2, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 punches, it repairs our mitochondria. It has all of these things that it's, and if you look at the toolbox that C15 provides, anti-inflammatory, anti-fibrotic, antioxidant, even anti-cancer functions that a whole nother group is looking at, it provides us, nature is providing us with a toolbox to help us, enable us to live healthier and longer, especially with regard to heart, metabolic, and liver health.
Oh, it's so fascinating to me. Again, I'm like, God, okay. And I guess I guess I just have to accept the answer of like, yeah, it takes a long time for science to like catch up educating the public. Cause I'm like, this just seems like the golden ticket here, the golden nugget. Like why? Yeah. So this is why you're on the show though. This is why we're spreading the news here.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And we did, and so all of this stuff, like it's all getting published in peer-reviewed scientific papers.
Yeah.
It was just presented by Dr. Nicholas Shork. He's the NIH's head of NIH's longevity consortium. He's been in that role he just presented C15 at the top longevity conference in Copenhagen 2 weeks ago. So
That's so exciting.
It's just, we're right on the cusp, Amber.
Yes.
So like, yeah, you and your audience, you're right here at this giant unlock moment for the science, which is great.
So freaking exciting. Okay. So tell me then going back to the question, because I know I doubled up on you, but so are you guys seeing, is the research showing that this is more beneficial for, especially if you take it in a supplement form, more beneficial for men versus women?
So there's that question. So thank you. So there seems to be equal benefit for men and women with regard to the studies. And those studies are limited with regard to clinical trials. There have been 2 randomized controlled clinical trials with C15 supplementation. One of them was only in women, and it was in women with that had high body weight and fatty liver disease. And it in which women were given C15 supplementation. They were put on a low-calorie diet. So it was like 3 groups. A low-calorie diet, group 2, low-calorie diet, that was Mediterranean aligned. And the third group was low calorie diet, Mediterranean aligned, and C15 supplementation. And to be honest, Amber, I'm like, that's kind of a big ask.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because, caloric restriction, you lose weight. It's great acutely. It's not sustainable to greatly restrict our calories. It's not healthy. But that alone in a 3-month time period is going to have massive benefits for this population. So all 3 groups saw a decrease in body weight, saw a decrease in liver fat. The third group had trend-wise the greatest loss of body weight, the greatest loss of liver fat. But what really stood out from the C15 group was that they also had lower LDL cholesterol and increased gut microbiome health with regard to increased growth of this really healthy bacterium called bifidobacterium that helps with balancing glucose. So that was all women. So we couldn't say, is it better women versus men? So the other one was in young adults, both men and women, and there were equal benefits among men and women. And when we look at, most importantly, large-scale epidemiological studies, there's so many studies, Amber, on higher C15, just like we found in the dolphins, right? That people who have higher C15 over long periods of time, decades, among tens of thousands of people with higher C15 are less likely to develop type 2 diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver disease, whether you're a male or female. So there seems to be, and again, as a truly essential fatty acid for mammals, we shouldn't see a big difference between the two sexes.
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating with me, and I was just curious if there was any pushback from skeptics on the study where they did the major calorie reduction, because I'm wondering, if the pushback is okay, well, yeah, if you do a major calorie reduction, you're going to see lower markers for all of those things. I would be so curious of what the study would look like. Take the calorie restriction part out of it and just like a normal diet, Mediterranean diet, right? And then versus throw in do you know what I mean? I was just curious just because, so is that a thing where just the calorie restriction alone would have gotten a reduced fat? You mentioned a reduction in the fatty liver, that marker. Would reducing calories alone cause that? Or did you say that that they noticed in that third study there was a bigger reduction even from just the people who did the calorie reduction and the Mediterranean?
There you go. It's the third one. So, and it's really important. It wasn't statistically significant. It was more of what they called out in even the abstract, the take-home points of the study, that it was because this is a set amount of people over a 3-month period. So it's a limited period of time. But the trending was absolutely that third group was doing the best. And on top of that, there were significant differences with C15 and lowering the cholesterol. So heading in the right direction with regard to cholesterol, lipid health, and then with gut health as well. And then in the other study in which there weren't calorie restriction, because you're right, it's kind of well, I kind of want to know how can you make it so I don't have to starve?
Sure, so I don't have to, have the snack. The snack well diet.
Do fatty 15 and not do this and get benefits, right? So, so that was the other study, and that one just published in the last few weeks as well. And it came from Rady Children's Hospital from young adults that had history of fatty liver disease. And this is pursuing an ongoing hypothesis that fatty liver disease, which is now present in 1 in 3 people globally, 1 in 10 kids, didn't show up until 1980, by the way. So it very rapidly, showed up on the scene. That fatty liver disease is caused in part by C15 nutritional deficiencies. So Jeff Schwimmer, who's been leading this effort as a pediatric gastroenterologist and had really global leader in fatty liver disease, especially in kids, he gave this population fatty 15 supplementation for 3 months. And he showed that, one, importantly, at the beginning of the study, Amber, 2 out of 3 people in the study had are the definition now of the C15 deficiency. So 2 out of 3. So we have a mass population sitting on, and this was a biased one because they had fatty liver disease, right? So 2 out of 3 had low levels of C15. For those who took fatty 15 and got their C15 levels up and over that nutritional threshold, they saw decreases in their liver enzymes and strengthened red blood cells. So decreased liver enzymes in a population that has a history with fatty liver disease. And so again, Jeff's like, this is yet another, check in the box that not only may C15 deficiencies cause fatty liver disease, but that restoring the C15 to appropriate levels can reverse it. So that then feeds into this whole deficiency syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. So is this a supplement? So Fatty 15 is a supplement that children can take?
It is. So it is. The goal with regard to, so it's safe for, we went above and beyond and got generally recognized as safe status that enables children 4 or greater, older, to have it, including pregnant women and nursing moms. There's a whole group of studies that have been coming out from other teams about the importance of C15 with regard to pregnancy health and the cognitive development of neonates and children. So that work is still going on, but right now for this supplement, this pure supplement, it's for people who are 4 and older.
I love that. Well, you mentioned it a little bit ago that this Fatty 15, which is the C15 supplement, is the only supplement you take. So does that mean that, it replaces the omega-3s and the omega-6s and that you just need to take the C15? Or what does that look like? Because I know, here's the thing, and you know this too, right? Like, supplements can be really tricky because, God, you walk into like a Whole Foods or a health food store, or you just go on Instagram, and before you know it, you're choking down 75 pills a day. You don't really even know what's working, what's not. Sometimes too, you're actually getting too much of something because it's in this multivitamin. Then you're taking another supplement of this. Maybe you didn't get blood tests, so you don't really know. So a couple questions is, one, I want to know, like, yes, does it replace the omega-3s and the omega-6s? And then the other piece of it is this something to where you could have some sort of blood test or something to know that you're deficient? Or is it kind of like vitamin D, where like most everybody is deficient in it? And so there's like a safe range, or kind of like magnesium, right? There's like a safe range that pretty much everybody can take and you're not going to overdo it.
Yeah. Okay. Both really good questions. So when we think about essential fatty acids, right? So we're talking about our omegas, omega-3, omega-6, and C15. It's kind of like it's same as vitamins, right? So I wouldn't say, we discovered vitamin C, so you don't need to take vitamin A, right?
Okay.
So that you do need all these essential fatty acids. But the problem with omega-3s from a supplement perspective is that it goes back to those molecules having those double bonds, which makes them fragile fatty acids once you take them out of their food source. So when you take omega-3s out and you put it into into a bottle and into a pill, it's just, they're really fragile. And when they get exposed to oxygen, they undergo lipid peroxidation. And so multiple studies have shown repeatedly that as much as half of the supplements on the shelf are oxidized. And so if they're oxidized, it's not that they're bad for you, it's just that they're not going to be effective.
Well, and you mentioned earlier about like the fishy taste. Is that where that comes from? Because I'll be honest, this is why I don't take omega-3s and omega-6s. I know I'm not supposed to say that because I'm in the health and wellness space, but I don't take them. And here's why. I cannot stand the fish burps. And I know everybody says like, oh no, not all, this one doesn't have that. I've not ever had one that didn't have that. I don't like it. I don't like the taste of it. I don't like the drops. I don't like any of it. So does that come from the oxidation most of the time?
You are spot on. So
no, that's why I don't do it.
If you smell and if you taste fish, that is rancidity, that is oxidation. And if it is oxidized, in which all of them have levels of oxidation.
Yes, they all do.
Right, all of them, then, they're not going to be as effective. So, and they're, like you said, they're miserable to take. So a lot of people have a hard time taking omega-3. So the way that I get my omega-3s, I'm a giant fish eater. I eat a lot of fish. And so, I use food sources to get my omega-3s and am doing great with it. With the C15, and I don't avoid dairy fat. So the other thing is like, well, gosh, if you eat dairy fat, then can't you just do the same? Get your C15 get your omega-3s from your fish and get your C15 from your milk. There was a group that got together, Amber, and they looked specifically at dairy fat and healthy nutrients within dairy fat. And because the big question is, you have all these studies on dairy fat. You have tons of studies on eating fish, and they're reliably say the more fish, if you eat 2 to 3 servings of fish a week, you are healthier, just except for keeping in mind the mercury component
Sure. I was
and
going to say,
pregnancy.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah.
that. There's those. So, but pretty consistently, if you leave out the heavy metal contaminant part. For dairy fat, it's a mess. The studies are like, some studies say good, some say bad. So it's just a mess. And so it is not clear that by eating more dairy fat, we then get the benefits of C15. And that's where this group met, and of experts met, and they put out a paper in 2017, and they said they're actually, with regard to dairy fat ingredients, the beneficial ones do better in isolation, away, without having to compete. Because if you look at milk fat, only about 1% of milk fat is C15. More than 40% of milk fat are these pro-inflammatory, even chain saturated. So it's like the battle that you're putting in of C15 having to overcome.
Yeah.
Right. It's just for us as adults. I think for kids that they can handle that because it's for X amount of time, because there's so many good nutrients in milk. For us, as we get older and older, that, the reason why we created this pure C15 ingredient is for that, especially as we age and get older. How can we get just the good, Goldilocks health supporting odd chain saturated fatty acids, C15, without having to compete with all of these? And that's where, it enables us to get to healthier levels. So, healthier levels. So that's why your fatty 15 is ideal as a supplement, while omega-3s have challenges. That's no manufacturer's fault. It's just nature. So with regard to testing, so C15 is available in most cases in fatty acid panels that your physician can take, or that you have access to.
Okay.
But you have to check, because it wasn't until really the 1990s that C15 was included in fatty acid panels. It's a big reason why C15 discoveries about C15 didn't really start coming out until really the 2000s, when C15 was routinely included in fatty acid panels. So that's another reason why didn't we know about this before? And then we worked with Genova Diagnostics to develop at-home C15.
I got a great relationship with the folks over at Genova. We've had them on the podcast. I've had Patty. I'm tight with Jeff, the CEO over there. We know Genova over at the wellness. Yes,
there you go. So Genova, so they worked with that same crew, Amber, and so they worked with us to develop the fatty 15 C15 at home blood spot test. And so you're able to then order it, give a little blood onto some spots, send it back in, and get your measurements. And so the average, and it's helpful, like you were getting to, it's like, hey, if you're talking about deficiency, there's levels of that are deficient, and then there are levels that are, to enable longevity. How do we know where we are? And that's where this test really, the whole point is, that's where this test came into play. Most people are sitting at 0.2%, around 0.2% of total fatty acids in our blood is C15. That's putting us right on the edge of this cellular fragility syndrome of having fragile cells, the C15 deficiency syndrome we published in Metabolites last month. And most people are sitting right on the edge of that. So if you have less than that, you are C15 deficient. If you're between 0.2 to 0.3, if you're at 0.2, you're sitting right on the cliff, and you want to get as further away from that to get to the 0.3 range. And that's kind of where we get back to where we were before we took dairy fat out of our diets. And then Sardinia gave us a really cool hint of longevity and heart health enabling levels, which are 0.4 to 0.6%. People in Sardinia, longevity zone, they have levels of 0.6. And they get there because they have a really special diet that enables them to get high levels of C15. It's Sardinian goat and sheep that are grass-fed in a mountainous region. All of those combined results in pecorino cheese, which they eat daily instead of meat. And that gives them really high CFIT. So I'm Sardinian, so at Sardinian levels, not Sardinian, but at 0.46.
And so knowing these levels, so is Genova Diagnostics through their Genova Connect, is that how this test is made available to the public?
That is right.
Oh, well, that's amazing for all the Wellness Revolution listeners, because guess what, friends? I have a discount code from my friends over at Genova Diagnostics, and I'll put that in the show notes if they want to get that test. So yeah, I partnered with them a long time ago, and so that's amazing. So okay, so that's great. And so, but for most people, if they don't maybe have, is it recommended that if somebody is going to start the Fatty 15 supplement that they do have this test first? Or is it sort of, like I said, kind of like, like magnesium or vitamin D or like a probiotic? They're a little bit more benign. You kind of have these safer levels to where they're really not overdoing, or vitamin B. Is that kind of where Fatty 15 falls into it, where most people would benefit from it?
Yeah. My recommendation is because we have such a high success rate with Fatty 15, so it's the really tiny capsules that have no smell and no taste. So let's start with that. So they're super easy to take. And so we recommend just 100 milligram capsule a day to start with that. And Amber, half of our customers report, this has been since the beginning, since we launched in 2021 all the way to today, with over 75,000 active customers, over half report feeling better within 2 weeks, which we were not expecting. And so we've learned things since then with regard to a metabolite that C15 makes that activates our endocannabinoids, as it activates CB1 and CB2 receptors that, better sleep, calmer mood, less pain, which is when people feel those benefits within 2 weeks, they stay.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to, so that's what I was going to ask. So when they say feeling better, that's what I wanted to know. Because a lot of times too, this is the problem with supplements, as I was kind of alluding to earlier. It's like you take all these pills and some of them, they're like, is it working? And I was like, I don't know if it's working. Who knows? I'm just going to keep taking them. But I always love when you come across a supplement, it's like, no, you actually do feel better. So what were some of the reports? You said it was better sleep. What were some of the other ones?
Yeah. So reliably, it's deeper sleep, calmer mood, and less joint pain are the three most kind of, we call them delights and surprises. But one of those three in general are experienced within the first 2 weeks. We have a lot of people, again, just its role as an essential fatty acid of stronger, healthier hair, calmer skin, more glowy skin. It's just, again, if you think of like us for that, we're deplete and this nutrient, we need it back into all of our cells. It helps everything, right, get better. So so our retention rate, we have over 95% monthly retention rate on our supplement, which is unheard of.
Seriously.
And it's because you feel better. You feel the benefits. And then you go to your doctor and then you see better. So, like I said, Fatty 15 is the only supplement I'm on. I am not a biohacker where like I spend, 3 hours a day rucksacking or
Yeah.
I live a kind of a normal life.
Yeah.
And I take Fatty 15 and my blood work is all healthy. So it's doing a good job for me, but it's combining what we talked about at the beginning, good sleep, doing resistance training, and making sure we are taking the things we need to support our health.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no magic pill. That's why it's called a supplement. Supplement. It's not called magic. It's supplement.
Yeah.
My question for you, though, is also, what about research showing that? Because all the things that you mentioned, you're like, better hair, better sleeping. These are all the things that when our hormones tank, that all that stuff goes away. So I'm curious if there's been a lot of attention or studies geared towards the menopausal population and how adding this back in can lessen all of those symptoms. What does that look like?
Yeah. Our most enthusiastic base, by far, are kind of like right out of the gate are midlife and on population, especially women. Women are the ones who tend to be the first ones to buy Fatty 15, and then it's in their house, and then their husbands will start pilfering their supply, and then they're like, "Get your own." So they give it to and then they get it for their mom and dads, and then their kids. So, for this population, like for me, I was starting to go through menopause when all of this, we were doing the science on C15 and bringing it to life, and I started getting tennis elbow, Amber, when I don't play tennis. Like I was like, I had hip pain. and elbow pain. I'd never had joint pain before. And it just, menopause, we talked about going off that cliff of accelerated aging. And Fatty 15 it completely fixed it for me. So I think when you talk about not as a hormone replacement,
sure,
but as a understanding that as our hormones go down with menopause, it is truly accelerating our aging. And we now know that C15's role, a big role of it, is to keep our cells healthy to help defend against aging-related breakdown of our cells. So by doing that, and then having, again, hormone replacement therapy, you're fortifying yourself to basically battle the breakdown of aging at the cellular level.
I mean, I'm like, sign me up. Where's the link? Okay. Like, yeah. So I'm here for it. I think for me too, the reason why and this is why I just nerd out on all this stuff is just because, I mean, I definitely in the last few years have just totally, we talked about earlier, like bodies being hijacked. I mean, I have just seen in myself, and it's wild to me how much my body has shifted. And so for me, anything that I can do to, not necessarily reverse, right? It's hard to reverse the signs of aging, but just to try and create this longevity, this healthy lifestyle, just optimize my health. I think that's the word I was looking for. It's just any way to optimize my health is what I'm here for. So yeah. Absolutely. I freaking love that. Oh my gosh. Okay. So where can the listeners find more about Fatty 15? What does that look like? I know you mentioned there's like a monthly subscription. Like, tell us just a little bit about the ins and outs of Fatty 15. And also, I'm curious for the kids, do you guys offer, is it like a gummy format or is it just a pill at this time? What does that look like?
So for kids that can't take the little pills, they're little pills, but still, kids don't like swallowed pills.
Sure.
It's the nice thing is, and the way I actually take it is you can just open up the capsule and it's just a powder. So you can mix the powder in with, yogurt or applesauce or anything like that. So I actually melt it in my coffee every morning. So amazing. I don't know. I feel like I get a little extra pick me up when I do that. So
I love it.
So you can find us, the product at fatty15.com. So that's really easy. And that's where you can learn, you can dive in. There's a TED Talk on there where we share the origin story with the dolphins, which is fun. But also you can be able to look at testimonials, the science behind it. And there's the product that we suggest and really recommend and provide the best price for is a 3-month supply, and it recurs, refills every 3 months, and you really need to get 3 months, even though we say half people feel those near-term delight and surprises in 2 weeks. The real intent of Fatty 15, the Pure C15 supplement, is to help support your long-term health.
Yeah.
So you need to give it really the 3 to 6 months to be able to let it do its job and see how you feel. We always recommend people get their blood work, or at least know their blood work ahead of time, and then go recheck it at 3 and 6 months so you can see what Fatty 15 is doing for you. Everybody kind of has their own journey with Fatty 15, but it's, as far as our healthcare provider program has been growing quickly because of the demand from the physicians. They're saying, I'm seeing what this is. I know what it's doing for me, and I'm seeing what it's doing for my patients. So but again, it's just giving time and really focusing on this metabolic, heart, liver health. And then, like we said, kind of these restoring a nutrient that our cells need for seeing those other delights and surprises.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that you gave the advice of give it some time. This is not a quick fix. This is not, your body needs some time to really see the results. And I love that. Well, one last question I have for you as we round this out. Your career path is just incredibly inspiring. I mean, it's just incredible. And so I'm just curious, what is one lesson that a woman in midlife can take from your journey when it really comes to redefining their own lives, whether it's in health or career or just a personal identity? So many women listening to this show are stuck in midlife, or they are in a chapter of their life where they are reinventing themselves, or they are starting over. And just what would you, if you had one piece of advice to that woman who is looking, getting ready to start that next chapter of her life, and she is starting over in midlife, what advice would you give her?
Yeah, I think there are probably two things, Amber. And the first is, like for me, like I was a dolphin veterinary epidemiologist who then like made this accidental discovery that a saturated fat is good for us, and like that was going to turn that discovery in at the time, right? Not knowing where it was going to go, but if it was going to turn out to be true, which it did, is going to completely turn everything we know and understand about saturated fats on its head, right? And so at that moment, and then, we followed the science, we found the healthy skeptics, we found the enablers, the mentors, the research funding. That was 10 years to be able to get to it. But along that journey, and that challenge was, I was able to find an opportunity and a purpose, and that I needed to, and that when you do that, when you find that purpose in life and something that you really love doing, do it responsibly and do it bravely. And know that if you're taking something on that you love, it's probably not going to be easy.
Right. God,
Those
yes.
don't come. It's not a given. In fact, they tend to come like it's the opposite.
Yes. As an entrepreneur, I can say yes.
Right. And
Yes.
so it's this, again, that's why the responsibly is there. And do it bravely, and critics will come, like, and it might be from mom saying, "Hey, I'm going a certain direction," and you have a mother or sister that's saying you shouldn't go. Like, don't worry.
Yes.
And if you know where you're heading and where you need to go, and that you need to kind of like goes to the hollow critics.
Yes.
And because they don't
Yes.
deserve your energy, and just feed the energy into being able to fulfill your purpose. And which to me, it's doesn't mean, in fact, it's usually less easy, but that difficulty of having failures and getting through them, it's how we define what living is. And it's so worth it. So
So worth
keep going is what
Oh,
is
I love
mine.
that. Yes, girl. I totally agree. And yes, I agree. Anything you're super passionate about is probably going to be hard as hell. Just get ready for that. But it's so, so worth it. So, Steph, thank you so much for just being here and sharing your incredible knowledge with the listeners. And also so excited to share Fatty 15 with the listeners. But more importantly, just the discoveries behind C15 and how this is going to revolutionize our health and our wellness and our longevity. And so thank you for being the light. It's super, super exciting.
Oh, well, thank you for being the megaphone. Well,
Yes, yes, girl. Yes.
there's only so much where the scientific journals can go, Amber. So thanks for
Yeah,
helping to get the word out. This has been such a great conversation, and thanks for everything
absolutely.
you do for all of
Absolutely.
us.
Thank you so much, Steph. I appreciate you.
Great. Bye.